Welcome, everyone. It's hard for me to believe, but it is December 2nd, 2021, and we are having our last Land Use Committee meeting for the year, and like to welcome and call the meeting to order. And if we could begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, if you join me this afternoon. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, thank you very much. If we can start this meeting, I'd like to ask if there's any public comment on any item that is not on the agenda. And I will check with Madam Clerk. Do we have any public comment online?
No public comment.
They are missing out. Clearly, this was their best opportunity to share. Well, wonderful. We will move on then, and we'll begin with our consent item, and I'll let you lead that conversation. Or excuse me, we should do a roll call first.
Thanks, Chair Gore. Happy to do roll call. Just a couple of quick housekeeping announcements. We would just remind you that if you're not speaking, if you could please mute your device. And then for anyone wishing to make public comment on any items, the instructions to do so are at the top of the agenda that's posted on our website. Director Baines. I see him online. I will note for the record he's here. Thank you. Bulahan.
I'm here.
Clark Kretz.
Here.
Frost.
Here.
Harris.
Here.
New.
Here.
West.
Here.
Vice Chair Kennedy. He might be a few minutes late. And then Chair Gallardo.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just because Kirk's here and listening, and to make sure I don't mess this up, now I should probably ask if there's any public comment on any item not on the agenda.
No public comment.
Thank you. And we can move on now to our consent portion of the agenda. Yeah, I think you want to do the discussion on the remote committee meeting.
Actually, no discussion is required unless the committee would like to have some, but the two items on the consent calendar is the remote committee meeting item and then approval of the minutes from the last meeting on November 4th.
Thank you. Any discussion on these items, or I will look for a motion?
Move to approve. This is Wes.
Clark Kretz, second.
Thank you. Moved and
Second.
seconded. If you could do a roll call vote, please.
Sure, Director Baines.
Aye.
Houlihan.
Aye.
Clark Kretz.
Aye.
Frost.
Aye.
Gore absent. Harris.
Yes.
New.
Aye.
West.
Yes.
Vice Chair Kennedy. Absent. And Chair Gallardo.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. And
Thank you.
Director Baines, I might just offer, I think it looks like you've done that, but I was just going to suggest if you want to turn your video off, we might be able to hear you better. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is a report item, and this is on Chair Gore's challenge. And our clerk, Madam Clerk, anything you wanted to share about this before we start the discussion?
Just a reminder that this was the challenge that Chair Gore issued at our last board meeting. She asked board members to go back to jurisdictions to talk to your staff about ideas and things you could implement related to the workshop that was held at our last board meeting about infill housing. So we welcome discussion, and staff I know is looking forward to hearing any results of your discussions or activities that you're currently doing in your jurisdictions.
Thank you. So if I'll kick off and tell you a little bit with our discussion has really focused around the fee portion that we were looking at. And in particular, the fact that not just the city fees, but as we look, it's the larger piece at whole, in particular, our water connection and our sewer fees, the outside agencies. The charge now that as we're looking at it, it doesn't matter if you're building a 900 square foot home or a 3,900 square foot home. And so that really was the discussion that we've talked about, is there's certainly a lesser impact with depending on the size of the home. And so I think that is the one area that has caught the most traction for us in our areas to look at to see what we can do to help there. And especially if it is for infill, or if it's a way to encourage our housing for our lower income, fixed income housing. Anyone else have any discussions that they've had, an opportunity for everyone to share?
This is board member New, and just want to let you know that in Winters we have a new planning person just joined us. So he's busy looking at this, and we have also been looking at funding. And the other thing that we are worried about, and it's not an answer certainly, but in our green zones, we'd like to have some low cost housing. And one of the problems we have is finding somebody that is willing to build it. So just that's where we are, and we've been talking about it and seeing where we can go. Thank you.
Thank you, Director New. Director Frost, I'm gonna, how about Sacramento County? Have the county supervisors been having a discussion?
Yeah, some of the discussions that we've been having lately have been centering around fees and, cost associated with the, fees, for building. And, it's been kind of an ongoing challenge because we really just try to cover the cost of the fees, but the fees keep going up, and the fees in Sacramento are higher than other jurisdictions. And so that's been some of the challenges that I think we've been talking about at the board level. I'm trying to think of what else I can share with you. I think from the development community, what they would like to see is, how can we, find a way to create some efficiencies, I don't know if it would be in design or, what can we do to lower fees?
And I'm wondering if anyone's having that discussion on all of their projects, or are you looking at specifically as we address our arena numbers for those type of projects?
I think across the board for, from what I'm hearing.
Great, thank you for sharing. Let's see, anyone else want to volunteer? I'll call on you, Director Clark-Kritz.
Yeah, we some of the items that were talked about with the Mind the Gap, there are some things that we have not really worked on, but ADUs in particular are something that I think is something really the people would really like to see. And what I like about Placer County, they have specific plans that are put in place. So when people come down to check out the idea of an ADU, there's already plans that are already set and approved. So that's something that we've been talking about and encouraging. Also, parking requirements has been an issue. We've got limited areas for parking, and we want to encourage new businesses to come in. So we're definitely going to be looking at our parking going forward. We also have hired Michelle Reeves to help us with our community and trying to find ways to potentially have our community look at design guidelines for housing. And I think a lot of people in our town, they don't like development, and they see it in their mind's eye as this big and horrible looking thing. but it could be your next door neighbor's empty lot. And so kind of trying to bring it down to a level of not fear and looking at, you know, some different housing types that are very attractive and that go with our rural lifestyle is something that we've been focusing on. We actually have an SB 330 project that has been turned in, and I think it's one of the first ones that have happened. So we're going through that process. And I think that's about it. But a lot of these subjects are things that we definitely have been talking about. But I think that's about all I have right now.
Well, thank you. I think the important piece is the conversation started, so I'm happy to see that. Those of you that weren't with us at our lunch, I was sharing this morning, we had a joint meeting with the Chambers of Commerce in our area that was hosted in Loomis. And so they focused on Loomis in their reporting, but in the real estate report, they reported that the average price of a home in Loomis now was over $900,000. That's a great conversation in Loomis, who I know doesn't want a lot of growth, but then at least they can understand how about for your kids or an ADU for your mom in the back, and that might be a more palatable approach.
Yeah, for sure. I actually really enjoyed the gentleman that came and spoke about Mercy Housing. And I feel like any jurisdiction would be great. It would be great for any jurisdiction to hear what he had to say. It was really eye-opening. And as I was telling Jill in that meeting, I have a daughter that can't afford to live here in our town. And you know, it's something that we are definitely striving for, at least me personally, to see more housing for people just starting out, people that are teachers, seniors, and people that are disabled, that type of thing. So yeah, it's a discussion that needs to happen, and we need to do some work to make it so.
Thank you. Well, we will gather the information if there's no other, and certainly be sharing with Chair Gore at our next meeting, and let her know that she got us thinking. And of course, as Chair Gore is our Placer County supervisors, one of ours, we'll be knocking on their door for some assistance as well, I'm sure, with the county. Thank you all. Well, we will, after we share that information with Chair Gore, we can move on now to our next item, and that is our action items. And it looks like Renee is going to be our first presenter on the contracting services.
All right, good afternoon. Renee DeVere-Oki from your planning staff. I'm also the project manager for the Coordinated Rural Opportunities Plan, what we call CROP. So you've heard a little bit about CROP over the summer, and we've had various presentations. The last one was Glenda Humiston from UCNR, and then we also had the Nature Conservancy as well as Placer County Water Agency come speak with us. But today we're requesting board authorization of the executive director to enter into an agreement, either by entering into a sub-recipient master agreement or through the release of a RFP to solicit support for consultant services related to the plan and engagement. Just as a little bit of background, SACOG was awarded $250,000 from the Department of Conservation for this project as part of their Sustainable Agricultural Lands Conservation Grant Program. And this grant does allow for SACOG to enter into a contract with a consultant or partner. And the hope is the consultant will assist project staff in creating a regional strategy for supporting agricultural lands and assisting staff to gain a better understanding of the unique role that agriculture is playing throughout the region, what works completed or underway, impacts on the economy, as well as opportunities for regional coordination and priority setting. So staff is requesting that the board authorize the executive director to negotiate and execute a contract with the consultant in an amount not to exceed $117,000. The selected consultant will help build upon ongoing project efforts by our staff and our partner Valley Vision. We'll work with a 6-county advisory working group and engage regional partners at key milestones. So this work is already included in our overall work program. The amendment would not change the amount of funding that's available. It would just be shifting from staff work to a consultant work. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on this item? All right, we're a quiet group tonight. We'll see none. Can I get a motion on this item?
So moved by Frost.
Second by New.
Thank you. A roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Director Baines. I'll come back to him. Bullahan,
Yes.
Clark Kretz,
Yes.
Frost,
Aye.
Gore is absent, Harris,
Yes.
New,
Aye.
West,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kennedy, absent, Chair Gallardo,
Yes.
and Director Baines, if you're there, could you indicate your vote? I don't see him. I'll mark him absent. Motion carries.
Thank you. We'll move on to our information items. I know we have several really interesting information items today I'm looking forward to. And I think our first one is the draft growth forecast, and Garrett Vallarosa will be our presenter.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for that setup. We're also very excited to share some of these great information items with you this afternoon. And the first one is a continuation on a conversation we're having last month. And that's one of the first steps we do when we're updating our long-range plan, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, Sustainable Community Strategy. And we're thinking about what the region is going to look like 20 or even 30 years from now. And we're trying to put some numbers to that in terms of the number of people that are living here, the number of jobs, the number of housing units or households. And so we've just gotten that work together, and we're sharing that now with all of our committees and all of our partners. And really, this is a very important part of the plan update in that it sets some bounds around the growth that we can expect in the region, therefore that we can plan for in the plan. And so it will have very much some implications for our work with all of your member agencies when it gets time to thinking about growth in the region. What we're talking about today is actually sort of the first step in that process. That's the growth that it's still very much at the full 6-county region scale. And then we'll be working very closely in 2022 or next year with the cities and counties about how that's distributed within and amongst communities in the SACOG region. And we do this because it's a requirement of the plan. It's something we need to do in terms of state and federal requirements, but it's also an important building block when we try and think about what the region is going to look like, what are the investments we need and the policies we need to help activate that sort of experience and that growth. So while this is draft, we very much want to get this on your radar and talk about a couple of key themes, let it sort of percolate and get it in front of all of your member agency staffs before we come back early next year for an action on this. And so if you follow the staff item, it's kind of lengthy, so maybe I'll give a summary. I think the key point to take away is when we're looking into the future for our region, we see the region continuing to grow. We see growth in the region that's outpacing the rate in the state and the nation, but that we see growth slowing relative to where we projected last plan. And that's for a variety of factors. We're happy to talk through those in more depth. A lot of them have to do with just sort of birth rates and population. And as you go closer and closer to a couple decades out, 2035, 2040, 2045, 2050, a lot of those demographic trends really come to a head. And so when you overlay that with what we're seeing in our own region, we do see a little bit of a slower growth than we did in the last projection. And so we're thinking by about 2050, maybe around the range of 570,000 new people. For context, last cycle, we're talking about over 600,000, and similar for jobs and housing. So it's still a growth rate in the region, like I said, which is outpacing what we think we're going to see in the state and the nation, but it is a little bit slower. Part of that has to do with just extending further into time. And a lot of those trends we talked about, especially around demographic trends, really start to slow down in the tail end of that. And part of it is maybe just refining some of the assumptions we made, especially we have some more data since the Great Recession, and we're trying to incorporate the best we can the data coming in about what's been going on the last year and a half because of COVID. We very much recognize that the future is uncertain. It's a very complicated thing to do, and it's full of the assumptions you make in this work are very important. And really achieving that projection, whatever the board decides to adopt, really will necessitate the corresponding sort of set of policies in the MTP SES to sort of help activate that projection, especially if the projection is higher than what the state or the nation is doing. So, there's some technical things about the jobs, about the population, and about the housing that I'm more than happy to go through. But I think, again, the key points, right? This is the draft numbers, but we want this to get out, make sure it's in front of all your local planning staff. We'll be coming back in February. We do ask for an action on this, even though it's a sort of technical piece of work. We do ask for the board's endorsement of the growth projections. So if there's any input that your staff has between now and February, we're all ears. If there's any input that this committee or your colleagues on the other committees have, we're very welcome to hear that. And again, sort of the key takeaway points: growing region, but maybe not as fast as we had thought in the prior plan cycle. That very much has implications for this plan, in that the plan is what we call is constrained. It will have a add up to all of the growth. So if you think collectively of all the growth areas in your region, right, it can't exceed the number that we have at the regional level. And so it is an important piece of information that we bring forward as part of the plan update. So that concludes my presentation, but as always, we're always happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Just one question I had, and you talked about that you were looking for an endorsement. Did you need that today, or are you looking for the entire board endorsement?
Right. So we'll come back next year, actually, for the action for the full board. So that would be in February. So today is very much just the information. These are draft, but it is a very important part of the plan. So we want to make sure we have ample time for you as the acting committee. You'll be probably making the recommendation, and then also for your own staff to get this in front of them, and then in early 2022 come back for the action.
Thank you. Appreciate you confirming that. Questions? I see Director Frost.
I'm just wondering how these projections align with our prior projections with the MTP, SCS, and so forth.
Great. Yeah, great question. And so there's a couple tables in the staff report, and the table 1C is the one I'll be talking to help answer your question, Director Frost. You don't have to have it in front of you because I'll go through it. Our prior plan, so our adopted MTP SCS, covered a period of 2016 to 2040, and it had a growth rate that was about 600 plus in terms of population, and about 200, let me pull it up, 70 or so on employment, and 255 for housing. So our new projections are a little bit smaller than that. That's the point I was trying to emphasize. This is a little bit of a slower projection. And the reason we need to call attention to that is not only is it a smaller number in terms of the increment of change, but it's also a longer time period. Our new projections actually go out to 2050. And so if you look at, in particular, it's a little bit of a technical term, but the growth per year is called an annual average growth rate, or for short AAGR. It is a fair amount slower in this new projection relative to the prior one. So your question, Director Frost, is a good one. We do see, relative to our prior plan, growth slowing a little bit, and so those are the actual numbers are in that table themselves.
So I guess that just creates more challenges with our next update, basically, on the MTP SCS and with housing.
Yeah, it's a point well taken. The charge that's put on this effort is the best sort of reasonable estimate we can put forward based on the data available. And if there's another table further down, there's a lot of tables in this attachment that show our projections relative to the state and the nation and our peers that also show that same slowing of growth. So regardless of what we did, just simply going through time, right? So our new plan, we're constantly moving forward in time, right? So the end of that is always going to be out into the future. Simply moving forward in time, we're going to most likely see slower growth because of those larger demographic trends I talked about. Birth rates, this is nothing unique to the Sacramento region. It's a national and even global phenomenon. Birth rates continue to go down. So as you get into 2040 or 2050, that's a slower population growth rate. So as you move forward into time, right, so then the next plan, and you can anticipate the plan cycle after that, it's a different growth paradigm than the current one. And so in terms of housing, right, and jobs are the other components of it, we still see a robust population or housing estimate. The growth, the projection talks about a lot of the sort of building blocks in place, such as Green Means Go, or even this conversation that you as a committee just had about activities to support infill and other types of development. So there's still very much an ample amount of growth that is the region we expect to see, but is a little bit slower than in past cycles.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on this item? All right. Any public comment? It's an information item. Do we have any public comment on this item?
There's no public comment.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Garrett. Appreciate it. And we'll look forward to the more of the detail coming and having a more in-depth conversation. All right. Well, moving on to our next information item, it's always good to talk about funding. So Chris Daughtry is going to be talking to us about the tentative programs for this coming year.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Chris Doherty with your transportation group here at SACOG. Let me share my screens. I have a quick PowerPoint. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So again, the item before you today is an update on the funding round and an overview of the programs that we are expecting to launch in the next calendar year. For the last 15 years, SACOG's funding round has been an important source of funding for the region's transportation investments. These competitive projects fund road, transit, bicycle, and pedestrian projects throughout the four-county region. As we move into the next funding cycle, we are aiming to build on the successes of the last funding round while bringing the program into alignment with the new state and federal policies. Because of the robust engagement effort and the success of the last funding round, we are recommending to keep that same framework that this board approved in 2019. But to bring those programs through their guidelines into alignment with the new state and federal policies. We would amend guidelines to align with the state's Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure Program, or CAPTI, and also with new state and federal equity policies that are emerging, as well as the ongoing SACOG efforts around equity. All these programs that I'll be talking about are all designed to advance regional priorities and implement the SES. So the first program that we are looking to launch next year will be the Rotating Match Fund. This program was conceived in the existing framework that we ran through last year, but had yet to be implemented. And the goal of this program is to use a strategic percentage of the funding estimate for the funding round to support local match and leveraging requirements for state and federal competitive grant programs. With the recent signing of the Federal Transportation Bill, the IIJA, we understand that a large percentage of the increase in the transportation funding that we are expecting will largely be through those competitive programs. So the goal of this is to be strategic and have some resources and funding together for our partner jurisdictions to better position ourselves for those new competitive programs that are launching at both the federal and state level. Sorry. And the Innovative Mobility Program, which is one that you should be familiar with. It's been run for several years here at SACOG. This program funds a broad range of activities to advance TDM, telework initiatives, and civic lab, excuse me. This program has funded several innovative pilot programs and projects throughout the region. We are currently discussing how to use this program and retool it to meet the needs of a post-pandemic recovery for transit and for transportation sector, but while also supporting the current initiatives. So we'll expect to bring this new framework back to the board to launch this this year. And our Engage, Empower, and Implement program. This was formerly the Disadvantaged Communities Pipeline Projects Program, which is slightly difficult to say, and will be launched this year. This framework will establish a planning process and funding stream approach that will meet the needs of our region's BIPOC communities and low-income communities. And it's expected to, that framework creation will begin ideally in spring and will be led by our staff member, Rosie Ramos, which you'll be hearing more about in the next few months. And to move on to our core programs, as we noted earlier, we are recommending to use the existing framework for the funding round. That framework that was adopted created 2 subprograms under the regional program. That is the Maintenance and Modernization Program and Transformative Program, as well as carrying forward the Community Design Program. Maintenance and Modernization is a program for more cost-effective non-expansion projects that are less than $5 million in total project cost. This is commonly used for state of good repair projects or projects that are smaller and easier to implement. And the larger transformative program, which is set up for all system expansion projects and projects that are larger than 5 million and create significant regional benefits. And the Community Design Program, which is a mainstay SACOG program that supports placemaking, that improves the livability of our communities and implements blueprint ideals and supports the MTPSCS. Recent additions to this program have included alignment with Green Means Go and supporting green zones. So as we move forward and what's next, we expect to roll these programs out in a staggered approach over the next calendar year. We're going to start that process by coming back to you early next year with a funding estimate as we review that as staff and make the determination for your approval. And then we'll be including probably a more definitive timeline for these programs at that time when we adopt that funding estimate. And that timeline will take into account, there are a lot of new competitive grant funding programs, whether at the state or federal level coming. So we're trying to place our programs to be strategic, but also understand that grant writing staff of our various partner jurisdictions are limited. And when these programs come out all at once, we want to make sure that we don't hit application fatigue with some of our local staff. So each of these programs will require a significant amount of input from the SACOG board and committees, as well as a lot of engagement to you and your staff. This will be the first of many discussions that we'll be having around funding programs over the next year. So that concludes my program or my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions on this item? I think there'll be a lot of questions coming when we get a little more detail, but I do see James, you has your hands up. Oh, and Director Frost.
I can wait for James. Did someone else have their hand up first? Or is it me?
Yep, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I know, last year we went through a lot last year in the last couple of years with conversations around these funding programs. And one of the things that SACOG was committed to was finding a way to help, those who had maybe had like a series of funding that would, you're not getting all the funding for this project, but you could get this much in this round, and we'll do our very best to help prioritize those projects that have already started to get funding for completion. And with these new programs and the fact that we're we have the CAPT, will there be some flexibility in how we're looking at at these programs? And I think the question goes to, it might be hard to match some of those prior programs or prior projects with the CAPT or, with some of these new projects. And so it could impact, our progress with other programs. So by virtue of taking funding away, I'm just wondering if you could speak to that. Will there be some flexibility or some grace, as we're working toward this, as we work toward these new programs?
If I understand the question correctly, this last framework that was adopted, we had approved a multi-cycle award of projects for larger projects that would not just get funding in one cycle by multiple cycles. We have approved a few of those projects, and those will be incorporated as we move through, since commitments were made on those. But to your, I think, larger question about projects that are already initiated, am I hearing a concern around the new requirements around the state and federal levels? I think we do an extensive amount of outreach to your local jurisdictions and your staff to make sure that their projects are the projects that line up for with the needed outcomes for our programs, and we're happy to work with your staff on those projects to make sure that the priorities align with our priorities and with the state and federal priorities, if that answers your question.
Will they all match up with the, will all be required to match up with the CAPT, the climate action plan at the state level, or?
So with our last funding round, we had program outcomes there that were not indicated in CAPT. Such as freight and other components. I can see those moving forward, but we're happy to take a look at that. So I think we'll still be looking through this at a local and regional lens, while CAPTI is looking at it from a statewide lens, and the federal funding is looking at it from a federal lens. So we still have
flexibility at the local level across programs, basically.
Yes.
I think Director Frost, and I think again, I think our staff would be happy to talk to your staff, obviously, as we do offline. And I think specific projects would be helpful, right? To think about, I don't know if you're thinking about Greenback Lane, or you're thinking about all kinds of things in the county, right? But I do think we want to be thoughtful. So the revolving match fund that Chris talked about actually came from a lot of our outreach a year and a half ago as we set up the last funding round. That was something we heard a lot from project sponsors is, hey, look, we need some money to put down so we can leverage it, right, to go after state and federal funds. It only makes sense to put money down on projects that you can leverage against what's going to be available. And so I do think CAPTI and the federal and the new federal grant programs, we need to be absolutely thinking about what are going to be the competitive projects for those fund sources, the state fund sources and the federal fund sources. Are those going to be exclusively all that we fund? I think maybe I hear that in your question. I'd love to know, again, maybe we don't have to get into the detail here, but I'd love to know if there are some very specific projects you or your staff are thinking about, and that'd be easier to answer.
I don't have any specifics, but what I have is basically, the idea of, would it be possible to be flexible with the project eligibility and scoring criteria to maximize what can be, qualify for matching funds, and to position, help position. I think that was kind of.
I think my best answer, very unsatisfying is probably it depends, because right. I mean, we went through, as you remember, really rethinking our funding round last time. We did a lot of, I think, flexibility and certainty and back and forth, and we allowed a lot of local project. Hey, look, this was our first ranked project, our second ranked project. Not all of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are going to line up with our fund sources, our regional goals, our state fund sources, our federal fund sources. So, we will try. It really depends. And I sorry, I can't give you anything better than that. We will try to be flexible and fit the projects that you have locally that meet our MTP SCS goals. We will try to make those work. As you well know, we're always oversubscribed, right? But I do think we're in a new era where climate, safety, equity, fix it first are going to be the rules of going to be the things that are going to be competitive. And I think we do need to sharpen our projects and our applications and the bets that we place on projects to really be in line with that. Absolutely. I don't think that's actually too different what we've been trying to do the last decade or more.
Thank you.
Best I can do.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions on this item? Okay, I don't see other hands up. Any public comment come in on this information item?
We do have a member of the public with their hand raised. Chair Gallardo, would you like them to go ahead and receive their comment now?
Certainly, thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's Kevin Busey.
Thank you, Kevin. Please go ahead.
Oh yeah, Kevin Busey, County of Sacramento. I think, getting back to that question that just came up, I think from the CAPTI implementation of CAPTI, for instance, I think it really aligns well with the Innovative Mobility Program, the Empower, Engage, Implementation Program, the Community Design Program. But then when we look at the maintenance modernization and especially transformative, I think the concern is you've got projects that were either partially funded or funded in a prior round that may not align perfectly with the new CAPTI guidance. And so we've got these projects started and, with the hope of, we're kind of building up some additional federal funds over time through these SACOG funding rounds. Where is that going to leave us once we start adding more requirements? So those projects may not align well with CAPTI. But they still may be a high priority for us. And I don't have a specific example for you in the County of Sacramento, but I think that's the concern, James, is how can we be flexible? And CAPTI is a state thing. And I'm sure there's obviously a federal kind of similar thing to that, but these are federal funds. So I'm kind of wondering if, especially on the transformative and the maintenance modernization side, there's going to be some more flexibility.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. All right, any other comments or public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to our next information item. You did just, hopefully everybody received a copy of the backup information that came through. So this is going to be Victoria Cacciatore, and she's going to talk to us about a regional trail system.
Yes, thank you for the introduction and allow me to start sharing my screen. Victoria Cacciatore, the project manager for the Sacramento Region Parks and Trails Strategic Development Plan, and I'm here today to talk about the release of the Draft Regional Trail Network. So the Draft Regional Trail Network is our request to the Transportation Committee this morning, which they are the acting committee or recommending committee to the board for this item, but this is our work to create or identify the dynamic system of interconnected trails across El Dorado, Placer, Sacramento, Sutter, Yolo, and Yuba counties. So this is the in progress network, and we're looking to share it with a wider audience of partners to ensure that we're meeting the goals of the network and identifying the trail network that is going to best meet the needs of our region's residents. So starting with our work that launched at the end of 2019, SACOG staff analyzed close to 80 local plans, and across that close to 80 local plans, general plans, parks and trails plans, bicycle transportation plans, et cetera, north or south, east or west in the region, there were 6 foundational goals that rose to the top that were identified as how we could guide our trail network development. And it's also worth mentioning that there are many different ways that local agencies fulfill these goals locally. So we used the survey from earlier this year, the public survey that received, I believe it was over 3,000 responses, or different pinpointed destinations that people wanted to bike or walk to using a trail. We used our conversations with local community partners and also with local staff to develop the performance metrics that focus our interpretation of what it means to have a trail that supports economic vitality, or a trail network that supports environmental justice. And to recap what those performance measures are, you can look at the different measures in the attachment for this item. It's also worth noting that of these 6 goals that we saw across the region, our partners identified that the first 3, environmental justice, health, and economic vitality, were the ones that had the strongest potential to create a regionally beneficial trail network that serves the needs of our residents while also helps our region recover from impacts of the pandemic. So to dive a little deeper in what it means with those top 3, if you're looking at improving health with goals, we put a couple of different pieces of the puzzle together. One, there's a lot of studies and research on trail networks in the United States that show how your proximity to a trail increases the likelihood that you will use one. So people found that the farther away you get from a trail, that you're going to have a decreased likelihood of using it. So when we're coupling that with our knowledge that our base conditions from our 2020 analysis was that only 41% of households were living within a half mile of a longer trail, our goal becomes to change the context to where the easy choice is going to be the healthy choice. You're living closer to a trail, so it's going to be easier to use it. And we would aim to, with our network, increase the percentage of households living within a half mile of a connected trail from 41% to 61%. Related to that analysis that was looking at how close people are to trails, which then relates to your likelihood of using them and your ability to use them safely and comfortably. We did one deeper dive into the existing trail access analysis from June of 2020 and found that in our region, lower income residents do not have the same access as other residents do to these longer trails. We're looking at a rate of 35% to 45%. While neither of these are great numbers, of only 45% of households being within a half mile of a connecting trail is not exactly a strong performance for the great assets that we know are around the region. It did account for a 30% gap in whether you were likely to have that trail near you based simply on your household's income level. So with our regional trail network, we are looking to eliminate that disparity in access. And then lastly, a part that I would say most ties in with the interests of this community, it was that what we heard from our technical advisory committee is that the presence of a trail is not enough. It needs to provide you access to something that you want. So a place that you want to get to. And from our work earlier this year, we saw that people were not as focused on having a trail that they could use to get to work or school. And there's a lot of different reasons why a parent may or may not feel comfortable allowing their kid to bike or walk or scoot on a trail to school. There are a number of reasons why a person may not feel like commuting to work by bike or walking is the best choice for them or a choice that they're willing to make at all. But there was a very strong interest in connecting to the places where people could spend time with their family, their friends, and their community. And then also creating the trail access to the areas that make our region unique. So again, tying to the local plan analysis, the rivers and the bodies of water, mountains and open spaces. And so if you're looking at the online map viewer of the draft regional trail network, there's a snapshot of these community enhancing destinations that is drawn from our conversation with partners and then also some of the high level survey results showing of what the network provides access to and some of the places where it doesn't quite provide the trail access to those destinations that support a regional vision of economic vitality. So within this draft regional trail network, there are 4 categories of connections. The first and very important to all of our local partners are the miles of existing trails and planned trails that are sourced from your locally adopted planning documents. We have 654 miles of existing trails. That's both your paved sort of class 1, as Caltrans would refer to it, a paved multi-use trail, not unlike what you see along the American River Parkway. And there's also informal trails that don't meet those Caltrans design specifications, but are well suited to the environment in which they're placed in the community needs. There's also 1,200 miles of planned trails, also sourced from your local planning documents, whether it's a bicycle transportation plan or a trails master plan or some other focused work that was conducted at the local level. Also in this network are the corridors and connections that reflect work in progress at the local level, for where you have potential connections that you're discussing locally, or maybe they're sort of bookmarked for something that you want to examine the next time you do a trail plan or a bicycle transportation plan or a specific plan, what have you. We have 95 miles of locally identified trail study corridors. And also worth noting, some of these may be included in local planning documents, but local agency staff knows that they face implementation challenges and that there are additional questions that need to be answered before they can, upgrade them to the regional trail network as we have it laid out here. So, and even with all of those locally identified connections, there are still gaps that need to be filled for us as a region to achieve the goal of connecting all communities with trails. We have 69 miles of SACOG identified potential connecting corridors, and then also some areas that need more study where there wasn't a clearly obvious corridor or connection that would help fill in the gap in the connected trail network. And what we're looking to do is by March of 2022, focus entirely on the locally identified trail study corridors and locally adopted existing and planned trails. So continue to work with local agency staff and then also with the wider band of partners to see what are the possible creative solutions to change those potential connecting corridors into either the trail study corridors or locally adopted existing and planned trails in some instances. And between the requested release for public input at the December board meeting later this month, and as we work to finalize the regional trail network, we want to also check our progress against the performance metrics that we identified for the network, especially the examining whether we're able to eliminate the disparities in access for our lower income communities. That is a very labor intensive analysis. So we want to be able to have the the most complete trail network identified in order to check our progress on that. And we also want to check this with some of the partners that we worked with through community groups to see if we're achieving the regional goals that are intended to guide our trail network identification. And with that, I want to stop for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions at this point? Don't see any. Oh, yep, I do. Director Harris. Oh, you're on mute still. Yeah, it's the beauty of Zoom.
It's either one or the other that's off, right? Just when you think you're gonna not do that anymore, the pandemic ends. Anyway, so curious to know, at some point back, we discussed the idea of rallying community members together in support of the trails. And I think what you just mentioned, getting some ideas to make sure the needs are being met and whatnot, that might be a good opportunity to get some citizens together. Would you recommend, going our own program, or what is there a timeline where you think that idea and going out to the public fits? Is it now, later, or our discretion?
I think that it really depends agency by agency. Specific to Yuba City, I know that you guys are looking at examining the main corridor through here, and it might be a good point in which to share this as part of how it could fit into your agency's more local planning goals, which also happen to align with this. I would also share that the SACOG staff is happy to go and share this information with any local committees that you may have, such as we've been invited to Parks Advisory Committees. We've been invited to active transportation commissions, and we're happy to come present that information to your area
Okay.
to take it to that more local audience.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'll work on doing that. So you can expect a call, I'm sure. We have a few people that have asked me about it. I've mentioned it in council meetings, and they're kind of chomping at the bit and getting excited to participate. And so we're probably going to give them out. It definitely couldn't hurt. So thank you very much.
And Director Harris, can I just, and for the benefit maybe of everybody, I think Victoria did a great job as always in her presentation. So Transportation Committee acted this morning, sends to the full board December 16th. That gets released for comment and engagement until February the 1st. That's Victoria's kind of proposal. So the month of January in particular is going to be a really important one in terms of filling those gaps, in terms of those fuzzy areas on the map. Those are really important to begin talking about with all of our partners in that month of January in particular, because while this is a really, I think, an inspiring map, and it does show connectivity across the region, as Victoria has said, there's a lot of gaps still in there, and there's a lot of question marks too. So that window in January would be great if we can get your help on that, and that window in particular.
All right. Just a quick question up there in Tahoe along the I-80 there, where we have that connection, the green line goes through Colfax. Where does that, I can't, my windows are overlapping. The Regional Trails Network, the purple line, where does that end up there in Tahoe, that big green, where does it end up there in the mountains?
I'll need a reference really quickly because I think I know this section, but I want to make sure.
And while Victoria's looking for that, I would say on the other end, what's kind of cool is that Caltrans has just taken one of their, what they call these innovative concept proposals from our region, which is El Dorado County along 50. If you see that corridor going all the way through Placerville and all the way up, I think it's to the summit, to Echo Summit. So so on the other end too, right? One of our goals was could we connect from Tahoe to the Valley, Florida, the Delta, and beyond. You're on mute, Victoria. There you go.
Yes. For the segment that you were asking about, it ends roughly in Baxter.
Okay.
To connect with a planned trail that they have going from Baxter to Cisco.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Harris. That was a great question because I think you answered one for all of us. Any other questions on this item? Okay. Well, you've covered it well. And I am so excited on this item. It's something I talked about before in my particular neighborhood. It would be so simple to connect Loomis and Rockland and Roseville to a really great trail system and truly give people another opportunity other than their cars. So I'm excited for the potential. So thank you very much. Did we have any public comment on this item?
There's no public comment.
All right. All right. Well, seeing none, Victoria, you don't need any direction for us today. You'll be bringing it back, right? Got it. Thank you. All right. Let's see. Next up, we have the Youth Leadership Academy. So Rosie Ramos is going to be our staff reporter today.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Rosie Ramos. I am the project manager for the Youth Leadership Academy. And I'm happy to be here because this is our 4th cohort. So it's really exciting that we get to do another year. Pretty much all the information you need is in your packet. So I'm really here to just answer any questions if you have them. But we do have 41 new students this year, 14 from El Dorado. We had really great representation from there this time. We have 5 from Placer County, 15 from Sacramento County, and 1 from Sutter County, and then 6 from Yolo County. We are missing Yuba. We are trying to figure out for next year's recruitment. I think we're going to have to do some in-person outreach out there because it seems like we're struggling there a little bit. But you know, we do have pretty good regional representation, and we're excited about that. We also have 6 returning peer coordinators, 1 of which has been with us since the first year, 2 that are coming from year 2, and then 3 that are joining us from this last year. And their role is to help us continue to improve the program and really make it be something that's being influenced by their experiences and helping us make the program better. And they'll get to plan the different workshops and then facilitate sessions as well. The program will continue with the same similar themes we've had in the past. We look at the work that SACOG does across the region, which includes transportation and land use planning, working with local jurisdictions. We talk about environmental justice and economic development. And this year, we really want to make sure we incorporate more conversations around housing and the unhoused and mental health, because those were the 2 biggest issues that the students brought up as what they're interested in and learning more about. We have a orientation this evening with our new students so that they can get to know our peer coordinators and our pro youth coordinator as well. And we are getting ready for January. One correction in the staff report, it says that our kickoff will be January 15th. It will actually be on January 22nd. We are planning this program to be hybrid with online sessions coupled with in-person workshops. So that's I'm excited to come back in the next year and show you how, or let you know how we're doing. And then we also want to encourage you to continue to participate in the program. I know some of you have already let me know that you're interested in being speakers. So if you haven't already reached out, let me know and we can start planning when the best time for you to be involved would be. Excuse me, would be. With that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. Like I said, we're really excited to do another year of this program.
Thank you, Rosie. Any questions on this item? Well, I saw the list and I'm really excited that you've got such great representation and I absolutely would love to participate. So add me to your list.
Yes, I have you on the list.
And you did mention, you said a hybrid, and that was one of the questions I had. I know before we used to rotate locations. Will you still be able to do that? Or?
Yes, we would definitely still want to incorporate that. I think we're just going to have to sort of play it by ear for this next couple of months and see when the right timing would be. We're at orientation today. We're going to just take a poll to make sure that folks feel comfortable to meet in person, and we'll sort of go from there. But the idea is still that we want to go across the different really cool places that our region has. So we will look forward to working with folks on, highlighting different places. Quarry Park was a really great success the first year, so we'd love to go back.
Right, anytime. We'll make you zip line in. Come on.
Awesome.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, did we have any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
All right. Well, thank you all. Seeing none, then we will move on to our receive and file. And our Dov Caden is going to talk to us a little bit about the blueprint implementation activities.
Chair
I don't
Gore,
need CDO.
that's a receive and file item. So that's just really for the committee's information. But if there are specific questions, I'm sure Clint Holtzen could answer any.
And he's excited that we've asked you that at that last moment. Any questions on that item that we would be happy to have Clint respond to? All right, we're letting you off way too easy today.
I'll take easy. Definitely happy to respond to any questions if there are.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I think that's all we have today. Anybody have anything they want to share, anything important before we adjourn for the day? Anything exciting happening that everything's exciting happening, right? Oh, Director New, come on. I know there's something good happening in Winters, but you have to unmute yourself so I can know.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Winter's Tractor Parade, Saturday evening, 6:30. It's going to be a big deal. That's all I can tell you. I don't want to promote it too much because I don't know where everybody's going to park, but we'll have it. So we're looking for you to come. Thanks. I
love that. And I tell you, if it wasn't that it's our Christmas tree lighting that night, I would be there because that just sounds fabulous. You're going to have to, Director Clark-Kretz, you're going to have to add a tractor parade into your day before Thanksgiving parade.
Yes, absolutely. We have our Christmas light tree lighting on Saturday too, but tractors we would love to have tractors parading down our street. So maybe we can get some of yours, Director New, into Loomis and bring it on down.
Thanks.
If none of you have experienced it, Loomis has the funnest, it's kind of a non-parade parade, but they do a day before Thanksgiving parade. And it used to be, you know, somebody with their goat or the teams, and it's just really, really fun. So I could see tractors fitting right in. Well, I can tell you last night I got to do my first ever. Rockland has a tradition. Our Rockland firefighters volunteer and they drive Santa to basically every street in Rockland on the fire truck. So it takes about 2 weeks. And because Santa is magic, we can be in 2 neighborhoods each night. And I got to ride along with Santa last night, and it is just absolutely fabulous just to watch the reaction of, especially in our new neighborhoods where people don't know and they're not used to it. So we have a lead truck come through and let everybody know Santa's on his way, and he's on the top of one of our brush rigs, and it's just really fun. It feels so good to get a little bit of normal and bring some joy into the neighbors. So that's probably our excitement, and our tree lighting is also Saturday. We're gonna have to coordinate this so we aren't all on the same darn night. Anybody else exciting? I'm sure there's probably so much, too much to share. Well, if not, thank you all for being here. Thank you for this great year with land use. I really appreciate you guys made it not even so painful. So I appreciate doing this. And we'll look forward to seeing you all at our regular directors board meeting in a couple weeks. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.